Now just why might you be looking for me, Oh, you didn't know? I'm the 77th director of the Wangsheng Funeral Parlor. Hu Tao, you are definitely here for something other than that which falls within my regular line of work, aren't you?
Sup, boys? So Hu Tao just released, and with that we are going to do our overview video. These are basically just general information about the character and a kind of like a starter guide to get you going on where you want to build your Hu Tao if you ended up getting them, or if you're still on the fence. Hopefully this may give you some idea on what you currently have, if it's even worth pulling for her. So Hu Tao is a polearm Pyro user, and she is going to kind of dance around with the dead in terms of her kit. She actually does play around with her HP a lot, which is kind of a nice risk versus reward kind of playstyle, which I highly enjoy. So let's quickly go over our talents and take a look here. So our normal attack is called Secret Spear of Wangsheng. I don't know. Performs up to 6 consecutive spear strikes. Her charge attack consumes a certain amount of stamina, lunging forward, and her plunging attack is just like every other polearm user where they jump from the air, spin down, and plunge. So you can kind of see how all of this looks at level 6. I do think that Hu Tao is one of those characters that you would need to invest in to get a lot of gains out of her. She is going to be primarily a DPS and a DPS alone. So the more that you can invest in her, of course, the more it will pay off for your total DPS of your team. But again, we can see here how all of this stuff works. Next, we have our elemental skill, which is called Guide to Afterlife. Essentially, Hu Tao is going to consume a portion of her HP and knock the surrounding enemies back and enter the Paramita Papilio state, which this is actually going to increase her attack based on her max HP at the time of entering, and the attack bonus gained this way cannot exceed 400% of her base attack. So this might sound kind of scary, but in most cases, unless you are just rocking a 1-star or a 2-star weapon, you shouldn't actually hit this cap if you pump a ton of HP onto Hu Tao. It's not actually going to end up causing a lot of conflicts unless you are just running some really wonky weapons. It also converts attack damage to pyro damage, which cannot be overridden by any other elemental infusion, so you can't use her under Chongyun or anything like that. And charged attacks apply the Blood Blossom effect to the enemies, which the Blood Blossom enemies are going to take pyro damage every 4 seconds while under this effect, and this damage is considered elemental skill damage. So if you had something that was going to boost elemental skill damage, like maybe the Gambler set or something like that, it does increase this damage here for the Blood Blossom. And each enemy can only be affected by one Blood Blossom effect at any one time, and its duration may only be refreshed by Hu Tao herself. The Paramita state is also going to increase her resistance to interruption, which is actually really nice. Now this state actually ends when its duration is completely run out, or if Hu Tao has left the battlefield, or if she dies. So we can kind of see how this works at level 6. It is going to cost 30% of your current HP. So if you have 1 HP remaining, you're not going to kill yourself if you end up using it. She does have the attack increase of 5.06% of her max HP. Remember, at the time of activating it, her Blood Blossom damage does 90% of her attack, which is actually pretty good. And the Blood Blossom duration is 8 seconds, while the duration of the skill itself is 9 seconds. So that's not too bad. It is on a 16-second cooldown, so you do have roughly like 7 seconds where you're kind of stuck just doing physical damage rather than pyro damage. For our elemental burst, we have Spirit Soother. Commands a blazing spirit to attack, dealing pyro damage and a large AoE. Upon striking the enemy, it regenerates a percentage of her max HP, and this effect can be triggered up to 5 times based on the number of enemies hit. And if she is below or equal to 50%, both the damage and the HP is going to be increased in its either damage or regeneration respectively. Here you can see the skill damage is at 400%, and low HP, so if you're below 50%, it's 499. I was going to say 500, but 499%. And then you can see the HP generation at 8.25%, and if you're low HP below 50%, it is going to be 11%. And it is going to cost 60 energy, which isn't bad, and on a 15-second cooldown. For our first Ascension talent, we have Flutterby, which when a Paramita Papilio state is activated by Guide to Afterlife, which is our elemental skill. So when we go into our elemental skill and this effect is activated, for this Ascension talent, when that effect ends, all allies in the party, excluding Hu Tao, will have their crit rate increased by 12%. I despise how this excludes her. I don't understand their reasoning behind that, but you know, it is what it is. I would really appreciate it because she has crit damage with her Ascension. I really would like some more crit rate into her. But for our second Ascension talent, when Hu Tao's HP is equal to or less than 50%, her Pyro damage bonus is increased by 33%. So she already is going to get a big Pyro damage bonus on top of whatever artifacts you put on her. She automatically is going to have 33% more when she is low HP. And for her throwaway talent, we have when Hu Tao cooks egg dish perfectly, she has 18% chance to receive the additional suspicious dish of the same type, which is interesting. Now for those constellations, which if you are lucky enough to get more than a few copies of her, this is what you can expect. So while in the Paramita Papilio state, activated by your elemental skill, her charge attack does not consume stamina. This is okay. Her level 2 increases the Blood Blossom damage by an amount equal to 10% of her max HP at the time the effect is applied. And additionally, Spirit Soother will also apply the Blood Blossom effect. I think that's probably my favorite one. It just literally rounds out her kit to just do more of what it's already doing. I really like her level 2. Level 3 is going to increase Guide to Afterlife by 3 levels. Level 4, upon defeating an enemy affected by a Blood Blossom that Hu Tao applied by herself, all nearby allies in the party, excluding herself, have their crit rate increased by 12% for 15 seconds. Whereas we would typically have, whenever the Blood Blossom drops off, we get the 12%. Now, if we actually defeat an enemy, that Blood Blossom actually activates 12% crit rate for allies in the party. If you're working with a quick swap team, I could see this being super helpful, but otherwise it's negligible to me. At level 5, it's going to increase Spirit Soother by 3 levels. And at C6, this triggers when Hu Tao's HP drops below 25% or when she suffers a lethal strike. Hu Tao will not fall as a result of the damage sustained. And additionally, for the next 10 seconds, all of her elemental resistance and physical resistance is increased by 200%, and her crit rate is increased by 100%. And her resistance to interruption is greatly increased, and this effect triggers automatically when Hu Tao has 1 HP left. Can only occur once every 60 seconds. I think this is the only constellation that truly changes how I feel about Hu Tao. This constellation right here is awesome. Unfortunately, it is locked behind 5 other constellations, which I will never be chasing for it. And when it comes to building Hu Tao, mainly, like I've already stated, it is going to be focused heavily on her DPS capabilities. There is a couple of different options that you could go with as far as like team building, and we'll touch a little bit on that, but I do plan to make a video specifically on like what kind of team setup you would build around Hu Tao. So we'll go a lot more in depth on that video, but for the gist of it, both setups are going to basically take the same weapons. It's just going to be artifact choices that differ whenever you come to your team. But like I said, we'll get into that. So the top choice for weapons. Now these are going to be unfriendly to the free-to-play player, but if you happen to have them, they are going to be really good. Staff of Homa is going to be hands down the best weapon that you could get for her. It does have crit damage on it, so it allows you to work your crit rate into your artifacts, and it is going to have an HP increase of 20%, and it's going to provide attack buffs based on the max HP, and when we're less than 50% HP, it increases the total attack increase. Like, it's hands down tailor-made for Hu Tao. It really is, and it's super, super good. I was lucky enough to get one when I skipped on the Kaching Panner, so I ended up using that, and that's probably what you've been seeing for the entirety of this video in terms of any footage that you've seen. Otherwise, you could go with the Primordial Jade Wing Spear, Deathmatch, which is the Battle Pass weapon, or the Vortex Vanquisher. All of those are going to be amazing. I'm pretty sure Primordial Jade Wing Spear is relatively close with Staff of Homa in terms of the math behind it. It really just depends on which one you can keep stacks on, like with your HP being below 50% or with how many hits you can get. But just know that the way that Hu Tao plays, her attacks are considerably slower than polearm characters that we've seen in the past. She's not slow when she attacks, but she is slower. So it's not like you can just whip out like 7 hits to get max stacks on Primordial really, really quickly like on some other characters. Now for some more free-to-play friendly options, White Tassel, Crescent Pike, and Black Tassel all do really well here. Oddly enough, White Tassel is going to probably be the best free-to-play option that you can get out there, being said it does have crit rate on it, and it increases our normal attack damage by 24%, is actually pretty good. And of course, you could go with the Blackcliff Pole, Dragon's Bane, Lithic Spear, or even the Royal Spear. Now, as far as artifact sets go, the top choice that we would want to recommend here is going to be a 4-piece of Crimson Witch of Flames. The full 4-piece is probably going to be the best option that you can go with here. Increasing overload and burning damage, increasing vaporize and melt damage. And when you use your elemental skill, it increases this pyro damage bonus. It's all around going to be amazing in almost every single situation. Another interesting thing that we could do is a 2-piece of the Crimson Witch just for the pyro damage bonus, and a 2-piece of the Wanderer's Troop for the increased elemental mastery. So what this set is actually going to allow you to do is have just a ton of extra reactionary damage, which is super, super nice, especially considering our elemental burst has such a high multiplier on it. It's actually going to be just amazing. If you wanted to go for more of a reactionary team, this would be the way to go. We could also end up going with the Crimson Witch of Flames at a 2-piece and a 2-piece of the Noblesse if you see yourself using your elemental burst as the main thing. This is where I kind of think that quick swap teams kind of come into play. Yes, she is actually going to lose a little bit of her total overall DPS, but she gains a lot of DPS by just switching into her quickly, doing her burst, maybe having a reaction out of the burst and then swapping out into something different. This is where I think that it kind of shifts up what team ideas you would want to use with her, but this is actually a very viable set if you want just huge burst damage. Now, if you're going for the more cheeky sets, I would be remiss if I didn't call out a full 4-piece of Heart of Depth. I know. But after using your elemental skill, it is going to increase your normal and charged attack damage by 30% for 15 seconds. This is actually what I think is really interesting about this. Your charged attack damage being increased so much, and especially if you have C1, if you were lucky enough to get the C1, you could end up going for this, and it would actually be pretty interesting that your charged attacks don't consume any stamina. That is actually really, really cool. And again, another little cheeky set, but also very, very interesting here. A full 4-piece of Thundering Fury increases damage caused by overload, which is interesting because obviously we can proc that by 40%, but triggering such effect decreases your elemental skill cooldown by 1 second and can only occur every 0.8 seconds. So this is very interesting because this actually allows us to kind of mitigate that cooldown that we have in between using our main bulk of pyro damage and then reducing that so we can kind of just keep the pyro damage rolling, basically just keeping it going as long as possible. I think that, again, this is super situational and probably not recommended for everyone, but definitely very, very cheeky. I could see this working if you had a team built around it. It would be really, really interesting. This is actually very cool. So basically, we're going to actually prioritize HP on her timepiece. This is what's so cool. If we were to prioritize attack here, it could end up getting us into a little bit watery territory, but HP is actually going to be preferred here because of the way that she scales so much off of HP. And if you ended up having weapons that also scale off HP, this is going to be really, really nice. Of course, we would want to prioritize a Pyro Goblet, and then crit rate, crit damage, whichever one fits your weapon and kind of wherever you are to hit that 1-to-2 ratio on your circlet. Now, in terms of leveling up your talents, you're going to be doing a ton of normal attacks here. That's probably going to be the main shtick of what you're doing, so that makes sense to power it first. Then, depending on which artifact sets you chose, basically if you went with anything other than Noblesse in your artifact sets, if you're not trying to go for huge burst damage, right? Then essentially you would want to go elemental skill, then your elemental burst. Do them in that order. Just bam, bam, bam. If you are going for a big burst damage, if you are going for Noblesse in your artifact sets, then obviously you would want to go with your elemental burst and then your elemental skill. But that just kind of depends on how you feel like playing her, and then you should be good. Now, for my favorite part of the video. So we actually have, I haven't messed around. Date change just happened, so I haven't done my dailies. So this is kind of what I automatically thought of whenever I started working on this team, or whenever I started pulling for Hu Tao. I wanted to work out some kind of melt situation with her. There you can see when we do our charged attacks, it puts that blossom on them. So what we're gonna do here is we're actually gonna activate this. Oh man. You are screwing your teammates over, buddy. And let's hit this elemental skill, get this pyro damage, and we'll get some melts in here. Now, one of the things I actually like, since she can override her E, I do think that both melt and vaporize comps are going to be very interesting. And I think she's got some viability in both. See, there was a nice 10k on the melt. That's not bad. Now, this isn't like super impressive damage by any means, but I have seen where she's been hitting like 1.4 million. Yeah, some stupid stuff. Yeah, being able to hit like 2 vaporizes, that's not bad. That's not bad. All right, let's... Yep, that was cool. All right, so we're going to get this guy with some cryo.
Is it my time?
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen. All right, here we go. Round 2. I just need to... Yep. Damn! All right. So the obligatory, let's just see how much damage we can do. See what we can do here.
Think you can bully me? Can't handle your drink. Everybody stand back. Higher, hands on fire.
I was 22, but I was above 50%.
Here we go. Scratch. Everybody stand back. Higher, pants on fire.
46. All right, that wasn't too bad. I honestly don't even know what just happened right there. But yeah, that's pretty much Hu Tao. Like, she seems super powerful. She seems really fun to play. She is going to be kind of like narrow mindset of how you play her. I think the funnest way to utilize her would to be in a quick swap team. I think that's probably where she's going to get the most unique style gameplay, but she really is just kind of like hit your E, do some normal attacks, swap off during your cooldown so you're not doing like, so you're at least doing something else while that's on cooldown, and then blah blah. But she does seem to be able to hit some pretty stupid numbers. She is a Pyro character, so she is going to have that benefit of getting the amplified reactions off. So there's a lot of upsides to getting her, but I understand that she's not going to be for everyone. But anyways, that's going to be it for today, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Like I said, I will make a team guide on her very soon. I don't know exactly when I'm going to make it, but I will make it very soon. It may be at the end of this week, or it may be early next week. Not 100% decided. I did have already something planned for Friday, so we may just stick with that plan. I don't know yet. We'll see. Hopefully you guys did have some good luck if you pulled for Hu Tao. If you are saving for a rerun of a certain character that I cannot name because it might get me in trouble, that's cool. Or if you're saving for a character that is coming out that I definitely can't talk about, but you guys definitely know who I'm talking about, with some kind of sword and some ice. I don't know. Good luck to yous. All right, boys. See ya.